Hey, how's it going everyone? Welcome back to another video. Now, I was just working on a new jump up bootleg and I ended up making some of the grottiest, heaviest, most metallic alien bass sounds that I've ever made. So I figured, why not show you all how to make them? They've got that kind of sound that you hear a lot with producers like Master Error, Riptide, Gino, just those kind of heavy metallic bass sounds that sound really trashy and disgusting. Now, if you want to grab the all-important channel strip that I'm going to show you in this video, as well as a bunch of cool Serum presets that can feed into this channel strip well, and just some samples that I've made using this channel strip, make sure to check the top link in the description. So yeah, without any further ado, let's hop straight into FL. So as you can see, here's the project that I've got. Everything's fairly simple at the moment, nothing too complicated. We've just got some vocals down here, the bass pattern is here, and some drums there. So if I just show you the basic premise of the track. Don't have no involvement. And those are the kind of basses that we're going to be making with this. Now, what's pretty cool with this bass sound is actually all of those basses that you just heard, obviously not the sub, but the main basses are all actually going through the same channel strip, so you can get a bunch of different bass sounds using just this one channel strip setting. Now, in order to show you just how effective this channel strip setting is, what I've done is I've soloed the main trashy bass sound, but I've turned off all the effects so you can hear the sound just coming from Serum. Yeah, you can hear it sounds pretty terrible, but then when I engage all of the effects, you get that kind of insane, trashy, metallic, it sounds like a bin lid slamming together in the best way possible. Now, the main effects that we need to get this kind of signature sound is actually just reverb and distortion. So, obviously we've got a few reverbs here, but they're all turned off at the moment, and we've got Isotope Trash 2 for some distortion, but that's turned off. And if we listen to what it sounds like with just the other effects on, it sounds like this. So you can hear there's a bit more substance to it because we've got this effector and some other stuff going on. But as soon as I turn on this FabFilter Pro R2, which in case you don't know is a reverb plugin, you get sound like this. And you can hear it starting to come together a bit more. And then if I turn on Trash 2 for some distortion. And then we've just got this other reverb here just to add some stereo width to the sound. So, if we take a look inside of FabFilter Pro R2 just here, you can see all the settings that we've got here. Now, you can mess around with all of these just to give you different sounds, different kind of tones. But the main thing you'll notice here is this isn't something that you usually do, especially on a bass, but the mix is 100%. It's all the way up, so the only sound we're getting is the wet reverb. Now, if I start to tone this back, you hear as we turn it back, it gets less and less interesting. And you can also mess around with the space here, but I found around this point is the sweet spot because any longer you start to get a bit of a weird decay. And any shorter, you don't kind of get that trashy sound that you want. And obviously there's all these other settings you can mess with like distance. And all these other bits, but of course not everyone has FabFilter Pro R2, so you can actually do this with a lot of different reverb plugins. So just to use one that a lot of people have, if we disable this, we go back to that sound, but then here we have Fruity Reverb 2, a built-in stock reverb plugin in FL Studio. And obviously if you're not using FL, you should be able to do a similar thing in whatever DAW you're using, as they basically all have some kind of pretty decent stock reverb. So these are the settings I've used in Fruity Reverb 2, and if we take a listen now that we've enabled this, and just take a listen with the sub as well, you still get that insane trashy sound. So what I've done, I've turned the low cut all the way down and the high cut all the way up, just to kind of give you the full frequency spectrum, because you want that in this sound. We've turned the wet all the way up, the early reflections all the way up, and turned the dry down just a little bit. And we've turned the decay all the way down to minimum, because the minimum decay on Fruity Reverb 2 is only 0.1 seconds, which is about what we had on Pro R2 a minute ago. Then I've just set the size and diffusion to both be a little bit above 12 o'clock. And I've also turned the modulation up a little bit here. And then in this section, I've turned up the damp, the crossover, and the bass all the way up to max. And then finally, I've turned the stereo separation all the way to mono. And that's because when we've got the wet all the way up, if we have this anywhere other than all the way mono basically. It gives you an insane stereo field that can sound kind of cool in headphones, but it can cause all kind of weird problems for your mix. So the way I got around that, as I said, turn this all the way to mono, and then underneath we have another fruity reverb too, set all the way to stereo, turn the decay, the size and the diffusion all the way down, and turn the wet up just a little bit, just to kind of add in some subtle stereo width back to the sound. So if I turn it off, you hear it's really mono, but if I turn it back on, it sounds like that. And if we take a listen with the full mix with fruity reverb 2 instead of Pro R2, have no improvement. And I'm sure you want to see all the other plugins that we've got going on for this sound. So if we go through them in order, first of all, we have FabFilter Pro Q3. Now this is just an EQ plugin. You can do this with any EQ plugin. We're literally just taking off loads of the bottom end. That's because depending on what bass sound you have coming into this channel strip, it might have a load of bass already, and you don't want to be distorting that, otherwise you get a different sound to what we want here. Then next up, I've got one of my favorite plugins for basses, Effector. We've just got this on the phaser setting. As always, make sure you turn off bypass, otherwise it won't do anything, and we've just set it to here. You can have a mess around with the position in here. You can get all sorts of different tones, but I found having it there for this sound worked pretty well. And we've just turned the mix down just a bit because we don't want it to be too overkill. Then obviously we've got this reverb, then this reverb as well, both showed you that before. Then a key part of the sound is the distortion. You can use whatever distortion plugin you want for this. I just love using Isotope Trash 2. We've just gone onto the distort section, use clip control and crank this up so that it's really distorted, then turn the output down a bit so it's not quite as loud. Then we've got some subtle OTT, which will just kind of help to bring out the top end just a little bit and add just some of that cool OTT sound that can sound cool on different bass sounds. Then we've got standard clip, and we're just adding some saturation to this just to help drive the sound a bit more. And then finally we've got another EQ, again just taking off loads of the bottom end because you kind of throughout the distortion and the saturation and stuff might have introduced some low end that we don't necessarily want, so we've just cut all of that off. And then you can see at the bottom here we just have a simple kick sidechain. Now I'm guessing you want to have a look at what kind of basses we've got going into this inside of Serum. So as you can see here, all of these basses, well, instances of Serum, which are all routed to channel 29, these are all different bass sounds which sound like this. And you can hear you can get some different tones just with this same channel strip. So if we take a look inside of Serum here, you can see this is one of the basic sounds we've got, which just sounds like this. And if I just disable all of the effects, it should sound like this. Pretty boring on its own. You can kind of hear the basis for a cool sound there, but obviously it does not sound the same without all the effects on. But I just wanted to show you the kind of sound that you can have feeding into the channel strip to get that final result. So we've just got this PWM maths wavetable down 2 octaves, turn the randomization down, turn the level all the way down, and assigned LFO1 to this, which we've got on envelope mode and 1/16 dotted note, just to give it that kind of fast sound, because you don't want to have a sound that's too long when you've got the decay of the reverb as well, because it can kind of make everything go a bit weird and not sound quite right. We've just turned the wavetable position up a bit just to get this sound that we want, and ignore the fact that FM from B is on there. That's just something I was experimenting with but didn't end up using. Then we've got this formant filter, which gives it quite an important part of the sound. So if we have a listen with this turned off, you get that kind of sound but with it turned on. You can hear the difference there into what will feed into that final sound. Then in terms of the effects, it's very simple. We've just got this phaser, some distortion on diode 2 with LFO1 assigned to the drive. Then we just have an EQ with the top end being boosted by LFO1. And if you want to get some different tones inside of here, you can mess around with the frequency inside of the phaser. And then just having a quick look at some of the other basses that I have inside of this project, you can see here, again, it's very similar, except this time we're using the Formant 3 filter instead of, I believe it was Formant 2 on the last one. And you can just mess around with things like wavetable position, cutoff. Obviously, you can use different wavetables as well. And like I said, mess around with the frequency. And you get a sound like that, as opposed to But yeah, that's pretty much it for how to make these basses. As I said at the beginning of the video, if you want to grab the channel strip and some presets that can feed into this channel strip, make sure you check the top link in the description. If you have any questions at all about how to make these kind of basses, feel free to leave a comment asking anything you need to know about it, and I'll do my best to respond and help you. And of course, make sure to check out my Patreon, where you can get access to exclusive samples, presets, tutorials, dubs and more, and also my website where you can get one-to-one lessons, mastering and some other cool stuff. But yeah, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.